Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And this week I'm doing the entire Tremors film series. And today it's the 1996 movie Tremors 2 Aftershocks. Here is your trivia question for today. What kind of animals does Earl take care of at the beginning of the film? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So in this film, we start off in Mexico, where some of the local workers are actually being attacked by graboids. Senor Ortega, who runs the site, needs some help, so he decides to head off to Perfection, Nevada. It's here where we catch up with Earl Bassett, who is just living his life out on the land. So Earl did end up getting some notoriety from the events of the first film. Unfortunately, though, he didn't plan it so well and did not end up making much money from it. So Senor Ortega, along with a driver named Grady Hoover, show up to Earl's home where Ortega offers him $50,000 for each graboid he can kill, or $100,000 for a graboid he can capture. So after a bit of convincing, Earl finally does agree to help them out. And Grady, who apparently is a huge fan of Earl's, decides to insert himself into this and become Earl's partner. So the two of them head down to the oil field in Mexico, where they run into a small team of scientists that are trying to do research on the graboids. One of the team members is a geologist named Kate Riley, who has managed to catch Earl's eye. So at first, everything seems to be going really well for Earl and Grady, but over time they realize they need a little bit more help. And so Earl reaches out to Bert Gummer. And now, with the three of them working together, they start making money hand over fist. Now, you know it's not going to keep being good for long, as they manage to stumble upon what appears to be a sick graboid, but it's not actually sick, it's giving birth. And what it gives birth to are small bipedal creatures that no longer need to burrow into the ground, but walk on top of it and can see in infrared. So, with these new creatures comes a whole new set of problems for our heroes. So, will they be able to stop this new graboid threat, or at the very least, manage to survive it themselves? This movie was directed by S.S. Wilson. He was one of two writers for the first film. The other writer was Brent Maddock, who also partnered back up with Wilson to write this film. The original concept for the sequel was that it was going to take place in Australia. Both Kevin Bacon's Val and Reba McEntire's Heather were originally in the script for this film. Unfortunately, though, both of them backed out, as Kevin Bacon decided to turn this movie down to do Apollo 13, and Reba McEntire was just about to start a massive tour. Now, because of both of them backing out, Universal then dropped the budget from 17 million down to 4 million. They also decided to change it to a direct-to-video. Now, when production finished in 1994, they fought for 2 years to get this put into the theater, as test audiences loved it, but that never ended up happening. Now, luckily, they did manage to get Fred Ward back to play Earl Bassett, and it's actually because of Earl that we find out that Val and Rhonda got married. They also still managed to get Michael Gross to come back and play Bert Gummer, which is great as Bert is one of the best parts of this film. Now, the new character of Grady Hoover, played by Chris Scarton, was only created due to the fact that Kevin Bacon didn't come back. Helen Shaver's character of Kate Riley was also a new addition to the series. Now, what's funny is, in the film, she supposedly was Miss October of 1974 for Playboy, but in actuality, that was Esther Cordet. Here's some random information that I found pretty interesting. Helen Shaver was in the film The Land Before Time as the voice of Littlefoot's mother. The Shriekers are the new monster added into this film, but what's interesting is they never actually call them that until the third film. The name Shriekers was apparently something that the crew during this film came up with. Shriekers, by the way, required 16 puppeteers to operate. The noise that they make in the film was created by combining the sounds of a whale and a baby crying. Phil Tippett was the effects artist for this film and is responsible for creating the design of the Shriekers. Now, what's interesting is he would also go on to be the effects artist for Starship Troopers, and the rejected design that they had for the Shriekers in this film is what they used to create the bugs in Starship Troopers. Here's something pretty fascinating about how they achieved the infrared view of the Shriekers. The actors actually wore red suits and yellow stockings, then the scenes were shot in a high 8 video, and blown up to 35 millimeters. Then post production video engineers rendered the faces and bodies in different colors. As much as I wish this actually existed, the Graboid arcade cabinet in Earl's trailer is not real. On Earl's wall in his trailer, you can see copies of the People and National Geographic magazines that both him and Val appear in. Now, what's interesting is in the first film, Val and Earl fantasize about appearing on both of those. In Bert's basement, you can see that both he and Heather did appear on the cover of Soldier of Fortune magazine. Some people think that the graboid head mounted on Bert's wall was in fact Stumpy, the one who flew off the cliff at the end of the last film. They think this because you only see two tentacles, but it's actually the one that did in fact break into their basement, because if you remember, they shot one of the tentacles off. The body count for this film is 3, but potentially 4 if you count that one noisy coyote. This movie takes place almost entirely in Mexico, with just a little bit in Nevada, but it was entirely filmed in California. So when it comes to the film Tremors 2 Aftershocks, I do like this movie. Not as much as the first one, but I do like the story and the addition of the Shriekers, especially because it just makes it a little bit more interesting that there's another evolution to the Graboids. The practical effects, just like the first film, in my opinion, are still amazing. Now, even though they couldn't get Kevin Bacon and Reba McEntire back, that by having Fred Ward and Michael Gross in it, it was still a great continuation. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. And if you like this film, other movies I recommend checking out are Eight-Legged Freaks, any of the Critters films, any of the Piranha films, and any of the Feast films. Now it's time for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode. What kind of animals does Earl take care of at the beginning of the film? Those animals would be ostriches, and apparently he's trying to mate a pair of them, a male named Wildfire and a female named Susie, but somebody has apparently stated that all of the ostriches that appear in this segment are all male, so it seems like he would have a bit of a rough time with this. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.